Hello and welcome back to the AGRIMINDS podcast. I'm your host, Kacee Bohle, and today I have a guest with me, David Jones, and I am so excited to be diving into some topics around mindset, intentionality, and options. So, David, welcome to the AGRIMINDS podcast.
Thank you, Casey. It's good to be with you. I have mad respect for the work that you do, and I'm delighted to get to be in conversation with you this morning.
Yes, as any listener who's listened to any of these episodes knows, I don't typically go on script. I don't typically have a plan. I love the natural conversation and just kind of seeing where things go. But just so that listeners know who you are, if they're meeting for the very first time, who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, no, I'm formerly a dairy farmer. I was for many years, and I grew up in California's Central Valley before going to college and doing all of that stuff. And after some work in the communications field, I came back and decided to run the family farm. I did that for many years before transitioning into a sales executive role, and today I'm a coach. And to many people, that path seems sort of nonlinear. But as I like to say, I deal with humans where the fences are a little less defined. And I used to deal with animals where there's a clear hierarchy and structure, and there's groupings and relationships among animals, and perhaps there's more crossover between humans and animals than any of us are comfortable with. But I think there's lots of examples and wisdom in the animal world that translates to how we behave as leaders in the human world too.
Yeah, and I think what's so attractive about what you and I talked about in our call a couple of weeks ago, and that was like, I got to get you on the podcast, is that our stories are kind of similar. And I also thought, there's no way somebody else has gone through what I've gone through. And like, just hearing how like I grew up on a row crop farm, I was in sales for the majority of my career, and then now I'm a coach, and it completely like flipped the script on what I thought my life was going to look like. And for a little context, David and I connected a couple of weeks ago, and just on our connection call, just to learn a little bit about each other. And I was like, oh my gosh, we have to talk about this, because if you and I are going through this thinking that we're, the only ones, there's got to be more people out there. And I think the number one thing that I have been getting known for is talking about the stuff most people don't want to talk about. It's
Sure.
saying out loud the conversations that a lot of people have with themselves in their head that they're just like craving to have externally, but don't have any place to talk about it, don't know how to talk about it, nor what to do with that information if it is out loud. Like, do we just blurt it out, or are there action steps that we need to take about these things that we're challenged with, given opportunities with, that we're unsure what to decide, what steps to take, because there's no path out there, that there's no blueprint, right? Nobody's paved this way for us. And so tell us a little bit more about how you got into what you're doing. So you said like you were at the dairy, then you were in sales, and now you're coaching. Like, why the transitions? Why did you leave the farm to begin with? Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to say a little bit about it. I loved farming. I still love many pieces of it, and but ultimately, farming, while it was something I was born into, wasn't necessarily something that I chose. It sort of kept choosing me, and I kind of went along with it. And the guilt that I had, um, where I felt like I was sort of trapped in a life that I didn't necessarily want, but didn't feel like I could, do anything about, because I felt such tremendous responsibility to my family and to all of the employees that I was working with, and to the animals. I sort of felt like there was, even if I wanted to make a change, there was nothing I could do about it. Um, and it was through relationships with other folks, namely with my therapist first, and then with a coach, that helped me to identify other opportunities and possibilities for my life, and to navigate the really complicated detangling from a family business, and that was first. And when I got into a sales role, I loved the work, and in some parts, I do a fair amount of sales and business development coaching work today because I still love it. But there was plenty of that didn't quite work for me. I think that the through line that I started to identify was that I really loved working with people. And when I was on the farm, that was the animals were great. Animals have always been easy because, as somebody who studied animal science, it's, the behaviors and are fairly predictable, and you run little experiments when things aren't going well. Um, but the people there, it's far more nuanced. It's less linear. There's more that gets in the way. There's more opportunity. And so I started to have a sense that this was the type of work that I liked, but I didn't see a path into it. Um, but I guess, long story short here, um, I just felt like I kept on putting different jackets on that didn't quite fit. Um, and I've largely lived life through a series of experiments, but I got trapped in a few experiments along the way. And when I found my way out of those and into something else, like my life finally had forward movement again in a way that felt good. But it's certainly been hard fought, and yeah, it's been a challenge in many ways, but very rewarding. I'm glad to be doing the work that I'm doing today.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think that so many people have gone through that same, like, kind of testing the waters of like, is this what I want to do? Is that what I want to do? And then you've also got the extreme of, doesn't matter. This was already laid out for me. 5 generations ahead of me have done it this way or done this job, right? And so that's kind of what I'm going to do. The expectation is there that I am taking over the family business. And I don't think it's specific to agriculture by any means. I mean, you look back in history, if your dad was a coal miner, you become a coal miner. If your dad was on the railroad, or if your dad was a pharmacist or a doctor, like if your dad was a lawyer, right? Like that's kind of like been how it's gone. And I don't think that it's on purpose to trap people. I think it's just that's what we know. And that's what's familiar and comfortable. And so it's kind of just like, hey, you know more about this one field. And you see the pros and the benefits and the purpose that that original person had, and so you want to pass that same excitement, purpose, experience on to the next generation because you see the power, the benefit in it, right? And I think the same can be said for agriculture, right? Like, there's the tagline, "Feeding the world." Like, to me, like, I don't feel like I'm feeding the world. I feel like I am carrying on a family tradition, and I am carrying on what generations ahead of me started and poured their heart and soul into, and obviously they built this up, and I want to see it through, and I see the power in it. But for me, it was a little bit of a different thing. Like, yes, I had the opportunity to walk away, but I also didn't have an opportunity to walk in either. And so I was kind of up in limbo there. But I think it's so important to at least talk about it and be aware of like, what do you want? Right? Like off of what's the movie? The Notebook, where he's like, "What do you want?" And sometimes they're just like, "I don't know. I need you to tell me what I want." Like, and sometimes like that's the easiest thing is, "Dad, mom, what do I need to do with my life? I don't know. There's so many opportunities. Also, I don't even know what else is out there right now." And so I want to like wrap that part up with just saying like, I think the awareness piece right there is so key. And if you don't know what's out there, you don't know what else to explore. And so there is so much power in trying on those different jackets, seeing what fits, what works for you, what doesn't, what feels right. And a lot of people don't do that, nor know that they have the opportunity to do that, the option to do that. And so, if you don't mind, let's kind of like keep moving forward and transition into, you found kind of like your identity, then you moved into sounds like a corporate job. What's that look like?
Well, as as I was deciding to make the exit from the farm, I was really charting, what are my paths forward. There was actually, so this is a funny story that I don't know that I've said much publicly, but um, there was a role with the company that I ended up working with that I really wanted, and the title of that role was farm coach. So the way that it worked was when robotic farming equipment was installed on farms across the US, there was one person who would go to each one of those installations, and they would essentially coach the owners and the employees and stay on site for a couple of weeks and kind of help them get adjusted to the new rhythms and routines. And the day that I decided that okay, I've agonized over this for long enough now. I guess I'm finally feeling brave enough to do something about it. The sign was like, I got an email from my dealership, who was like, "Oh, this guy who was in that role, he just um, resigned. Isn't that interesting?" And my dealership had no idea that it was something I was even interested in it at all. Um, and so when I got that email, I was like, "This is what I want to do." And I reached out to the company, and I had, of course, been working with them, so I had a lot of contacts with them. And there was one person who I spoke with, who basically convinced me that he was a sales guy, and he convinced me that I wanted to be in sales. I don't know that I actually did at the time, but I'm very, very glad that I experienced that. But it was, it's in some ways, since I left the farm, I've been chasing this desire to be a coach. Um, but different career forces kept kind of molding me into something else. And and look where I've landed now. Now I'm coaching. So, it's as you were talking, I was just thinking about how easy it is to to be walking down a path. And for me, that path was in the dairy industry, right? And so the only options that I felt were available to me were within the dairy industry, right? It's this kind of like sunk cost fallacy. Like, I can't do anything else. I can't be anything else because this is all I've ever known. If I'm going to make a career pivot, it should probably be in an area that I have some subject matter expertise. Um, and so I was even trapped in that place of like, well, ag is all I've ever known. This is the only thing that I can do. And turns out that's not true. Though no one talks about how difficult it can be to make that transition, to pivot into something else, the length of time it can take to um, build new relationships in a different field, to, build a practice from scratch, something that you have experienced and you know quite well. Um, it's pivots are not necessarily easy, and so that's what keeps a lot of us from doing them. But to me, what that means is, if you are never brave enough to do the big scary thing that you want to do, you'll keep living a C-minus life where it's just good enough. Um, it's not itchy enough that you feel like you got to change your sweater. Um, it serves you well enough. Um, and we're fine with that level of discomfort because the idea in our brains of making a big pivot is far more scarier because there's so many more unknowns. So let's just stay right where we are because this is what we know, and C-minus is fine for me. But I'm here to tell you, like, if you've got an inkling that there's something else out there for you, like there is an A out there if you'd like it. It's up to you to grab it and to cultivate it.
Whoa. I have a lot of thoughts here. One, because I was pretty often a C-minus student all throughout school. Like I I did not thrive in school. I But here's the thing. As soon as I graduated from college, I loved to learn. And I realized, like, okay, maybe I was just going about it the wrong way because I was being forced to learn these specific things this specific
Sure.
way. So I was like resistant to school, right? And now that I'm an adult, I love learning new things. What a lot of people don't know about me is like I've been to auctioneer school. I got certified as an auctioneer for a while.
Really?
I yeah, I have taught myself to pick locks. I have there's so many things that I just are so random that I just want to learn how to do. I know how to do stained glass lampshades. There's so many cool things I can weld. I just love to learn how to do stuff. But you would probably not know that about me if you know what I mean? You wouldn't know that I was a C minus student all through school. There's a lot of D's, a lot of F's. Every now and then you would see an A, but that was because, it was an interesting semester or something. But honestly, I struggled all through school. So a lot of people now today assume because I've got all these certifications, have built a business and run a business, I've climbed the corporate ladder, you would have assumed that I must be super smart or something. And I don't know what that looks like, but in my mind now I just love to learn. And I think when you find the thing that clicks with you and is like, "Oh, that's how I'm gonna approach it. That's the mindset. I'm not doing this because I'm forced to. I'm doing it because it's interesting to me. I'm doing it because I see the value in the knowledge and the wisdom and the accomplishment of saying, "Oh, that's something that nobody could have ever dreamt that I could do, and I proved them wrong." That to me is like the fire underneath you that burns, and it's like, okay, so find the thing that gets you motivated and pivoting becomes a heck of a lot easier. And I will say I had that same experience of I've only known agriculture. All the generations ahead of me grew up on a farm. My mom didn't also do something she was a part of the farm. So it's that's all I knew. I lived and breathed the farm. And so agriculture was all I ever thought about. That's what I went to school for. It's the only industry I've ever worked in. And I think it's so funny, when people ask you, if you weren't doing what you're doing today, what would you do? And I always throw them off because I would love to have been on Broadway, being so theatrical and getting up on stage and just I don't know. There's something really fun about that for me. And it's that is so not what people would envision of somebody who wore cowboy boots and jeans and a ring of keys on their belt loop all growing up with a Harley Davidson t-shirt, right? That's what my life looked like. But it's honestly, I would have loved to be on Broadway too. I just think that that is so fun. And it's but how in the world do you go from being farm girl to being on a stage dressed up in a costume, belting your heart out? There's no pathway to that unless you are just complete 180. And I think that that is scary as hell. I mean, there's no runway. There's no unless you are just as audacious as possible and go for it. I mean, people do it, but it is scary as heck. There's so many things of well, will this work? What are people going to think? Right? What's my backup plan when this fails because I don't truly have the confidence in myself. And so I get it. Pivoting is scary, but here's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is a pivot doesn't have to be stop and turn around and go the opposite direction. A pivot can literally be half a degree.
Yes. Well, and I love this example of Broadway, right? So, um, because here's the thing that happens in conversations sometimes. First of all, being able to name something like that, which as somebody who likes to perform, some of my nerdy areas, I've taken some improv classes, I've done stand-up comedy from time to time. I love performance is fun, right? So
Yeah.
there was a time where I was like, okay, I could see myself pursuing this, and that's some of my maybe someday things. It's over there. I'm content with where it's at right now. But what you mentioned was okay, there's no runway from agriculture to Broadway, right? So if we're working with that when we're in a coaching relationship with somebody, I love what you said about a pivot doesn't have to be a full 180. It can be just a degree. And I'm a big fan of let's just, I think strategic thinkers get in this space where if I can't see from here until the end result, it's not worth me pursuing. Because I can only see as far well, go until you get stuck. You don't have to have it figured out from start to finish. In fact, if you do, you're likely limiting what's possible for yourself. Um, what's one thing? So, like, you're obviously, I'm guessing you're very happy with what you're doing right now. You're not going to go pursue Broadway. But if we were in a conversation and I were to ask you, okay, so we've identified like what it is about Broadway that you love, and you're very clear about why it lights you up and what it could do for you. What would be one step you would take to start walking towards that while still living this life over here?
Yeah, that's so good. I get my itch now from speaking. So maybe I'm not on stage belting my heart out through song and dance, but I am performing in a sense when I'm on stage speaking in front of crowds. I mean, you do have to put on like not a facade, but like a coat of armor that is confidence. You have to be in the story that you're telling to emotionally connect with your audience. So you are performing in a sense. And so I've had to get out of my comfort zone. It's like, okay, maybe I'm still in agriculture and I'm not taking this complete 180. And listen, I don't think that I would have ever actually done Broadway, but I do like performing. And so this does scratch my itch. And I think that's why I love doing keynotes and workshops and just like really get it. Even podcasting scratches that itch a little bit because we are telling this story. We're pulling information out, captivating the audience, bringing them along for the ride in a way. And so, like, I can still shift my mindset and still do the performance through outlets like this as well.
Oh, totally. Yeah. So it sounds like you're already walking a version of Broadway that works for you, right? So
Yeah.
it's yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Woohoo. I didn't even realize that I did that. Like, that's the power of coaching right there. Like, did you guys notice how he didn't even ask me too many coaching questions, but he took me along, guided me. That's the power of coaching, okay? Like guided me along this route and I just like realized right then and there like I am sort of living out that version of my dream that's tailored to the lifestyle without doing 100% a pivot, like a 180 pivot. It's not a complete change. It's a degree, a certain degree of change that still keeps me rooted and grounded in what I know and love, but also helps me fulfill this dream that I thought was completely different and far fetched. It was so
Yeah,
fun.
and if you were to say, and I can't help myself, so I've got a couple more questions if that's okay with you.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so if you were saying like from 0 to 100% of your focus right now, like how much is speaking? Like what sliver does it get of your focus?
Mm. It definitely depends on the season, right? Like, I think within ag specifically, right, there is a speaking season in the winter months. That's where all the conferences
Sure.
and meetings and stuff are. So I would say it depends on the season, but it's close to probably 40% of my time is spent speaking.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's great. So 40% is, your version of Broadway right now. And yeah, if you ever wanted to be 50 or 60%, like that would be a conversation that we would have in a coaching engagement, right? Where it'd be like,
Yeah.
okay, well, how do we start to expand this just a little bit further? And
Mhm.
like not stretch the rubber band to the place where it breaks, but like let's stretch to the point of discomfort and start trying things on and see what can happen. Yeah, it's why I love the work.
Isn't this so fun? Okay, so for people who are listening to this episode, what are some questions or things that they can begin to get aware of that are like, maybe it's time for me to start pivoting. Maybe it's time for me to at least just go 1 degree. Or, do things need to change? Or do they not need to change right now, but it's something to be aware of so that way in the future they can start putting a plan into place? What are some thoughts you got around that?
Yeah, I think um your thoughts have to have some sort of receptacle. I believe that when our thoughts just stay in your brain, it's really easy for them to get all jumbled up and mixed together and for there to be no clarity. And so if you're sitting with really big questions, um, to me, there's perhaps there's a number of ways to access them and get a little bit of clarity, but there's a couple of things that come to mind first. And the first is simply to purge your thoughts, to put them on paper, to start writing. That's one way to start gaining some awareness. And not writing because you want anyone to see it or because you think you're going to write something brilliant. The goal is not to censor yourself. It's just to start to write stream of consciousness, what's in your brain. When I ask you the question, if you were living a different life, what do you dream it would look like? And that's a big question. So start writing it. And you might be surprised at what emerges. And maybe you won't be. Maybe these are things that you've been thinking about for a long time, but now you're starting to see them pen to paper. Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, talks about like the habit of getting into writing and how if you write every single day and you kind of do some of the stream of consciousness activity, at some point it becomes very difficult to avoid or to not do something about all the things that you keep bitching about on paper.
Yes.
Uh, so I love that. Are you reaching for your copy of The Artist's Way? Yeah. I knew
I
it.
have the
I knew
Artist's
it.
Way workbook. How are we the same
Yeah.
human being? Yeah.
I'm staring at my workbook right here. In fact, let me grab it so that
So funny.
I'm yeah, here's mine. Okay. Yeah. Um
I love it.
so there's that. I think writing is such a powerful tool and there's so many of us who I mean, like I tried I think the way that we're introduced to it is, write a daily journal or like first of all, daily for a lot of people is a lot, especially if you've got ADHD like
I am
myself.
not a daily. I can't do it. Don't expect that from me.
No, but I think for me, I write a few times a week and that is enough for me to to work through some of these things. So writing is one really powerful way to start to see what's bubbling through your subconscious. The other thing is there is a real power to being witnessed by somebody who has no attachment to the outcome of your life. Most of the people in your immediate circle, whether they mean to or not, have some attachment to who you are. Because if you're to change, that means their life is going to change some way. And we know that, right? I mean, people grow and they evolve and our relationship shifts and sometimes people move away and we don't talk as much as we'd like, but we think about them all the time. And we kind of love to have the comfort of somebody in the consistency of like who you are. But it's really hard to make a change in your life or to do something different when there's so many people who are invested in the version of you are today. So
Mm.
speaking with somebody, getting some of these ideas out loud so that you can be witnessed, I think is a really powerful tool as well. So writing and speaking are two ways to get some clarity around, do I even need to make a change? At some point, you'll have enough information once you start speaking or writing where you can finally make a choice. But most of the problem is like, if it stays up here, we can't, like, choosing is an action. Thought is just, continue perpetuating the spin. Like once we get
Yeah.
into action, that's when things start to move.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So many thoughts here. First of all, I love that we have the exact same workbook.
And
I
of course we
think
do.
that
I
is
don't know why I'm
hilarious.
surprised. Yeah.
That's so funny. I am not a daily I don't journal. I ever really. I do have a notebook next to my bed because right before I fall asleep, that's when my brain is going. And like, I'm not even kidding. That is my favorite time to practice my speeches. Anytime I'm getting ready to deliver a keynote, as I'm drifting off to sleep, I'm envisioning myself on the stage and I will do my, like I'll start it off and I'll like go through and I'm like, "Oh, that's a good phrase." And I'll lean over and I'll write it down. And I don't know why that is the most clarity throughout my day. It's right before I get ready to go to bed. And so I do keep that next to my bed, but I don't journal. I do brain dump externally. So something I work with a
Mhm.
lot of my clients on is brain dumping because they're always like, "Well, I'm stuck in analysis paralysis. I don't know what decision to make. I don't know where to go from here." And I'm like, "Let's just talk it out loud, right?" Some people need to write it down and, like that's how they process. But for the people who are like me who can't brain dumping that way doesn't work for them, I say let's talk it out, right? It doesn't have to make sense to me. you may be feeling like you're talking in circles and not making sense at all, which I feel like happens often for me. I'm like, did any of that just make sense? And they're like, no, not really, but did it make sense for you? Yes. Okay, cool. Because I got the clarity I needed. And I do that with my clients too, of like, just get it out, talk it through. And as long as it clicks for you somewhere inside, that's all that matters. It doesn't have to make sense for me. And I think the same can be said for the decisions you make, the pivots that you make, the growth that you experience. You can't expect anybody to understand it, approve it, right? Like, because they're not in your experience, your reality. And so I think that that's so important to remember too, of like, as you're on this journey of just becoming more aware of what's working for your life, what's not, what's bringing you joy and energy, what's not, what do you decide you want to pivot to or stop pivoting to sometimes that makes sense too, is
Hmm.
just realizing like not everybody's going to understand it. But something that you mentioned, and I don't think you said the actual word, but ripple effect came to mind for me when you were speaking about how like it's impossible for those people around you to not change if you're changing. And it may take a while for it to get there and for you to see any physical changes, but the more you start showing up and you're kind of like conditioning those people around you to get to know this new version of you. I do it with my internal family. I do it with my extended family of like, like obviously there are touchy topics, religion, politics, homeschooling versus public school, right? There are topics that we experience in our day-to-day lives that it doesn't matter if we disagree, but I want you to start to slowly see where I'm coming from, and I want to see where you're slowly, coming from on your end too. And it may end up being a clash, but at least we're trying to meet somewhere in the middle. And we can't expect to always understand where somebody is coming from. But the work that we can do and the grace that we can give is to just try and understand, collect information, and see what that means for us.
Gosh, just there's so much in what you just said that I'm trying to decide which part I want to grab onto. I think especially people who love us, especially people who love us, want to keep us safe. And so any fear that we're experiencing around making a shift in our life is amplified by the people who love us. Not because they don't want to see us evolve or because they don't want to see us happy, but simply, most folks who love us are trying to guide us into some path of life that makes sense for them. Not necessarily what makes sense for us, but what makes sense for them.
Yeah.
And they'll
Oh gosh.
advise us based on what they've seen. They'll advise us based on what they perceive to be risks, not what we perceive to be risks. And so, I think some of the questions, I ask myself often and encourage the people I work with to ask is this fear? Is this mine? Does it belong to me? Or is this something that has been placed upon me? And it's a really hard exercise to start, by the way, because parsing apart like what's mine versus what's somebody else's is, I still, I don't know if that's a process that ever fully stops once you do some self-interrogation. Um, but I think one of the most valuable things that I've learned from this profession, and it's something that I institute in my own life, is the things that we make space for happen. The things we do not make space for do not happen. And what do I mean by that? Well, if I've got a goal, and oh God, I have so many flashbacks to all of the harebrained entrepreneurial things that I wanted to do at various points in my life, and I still have some of that in me. But I stayed in ideation about it, right? And there was no space to do anything about it. And by the way, I had, very demanding careers. And so trying to build space for that is just something that wasn't going to happen on its own. And by the end of the day, it wasn't something that I felt I had space for. Um, but when I started working with a coach on some of these things, the reason why things started to shift in my life, why there started to be forward movement towards, developing the business that I wanted or living the life that I wanted, was simply because I had time on my calendar where I was actually working on those things with another human being, where before I had to rely on my own motivation which is a terrible vehicle for success, by the way. I think loving self-discipline is perhaps a better one, which takes some time to cultivate. But if you don't create the space in your world for some of this exploration or to experiment or to try things on, if it's, I like to say, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't happen, though we all have different ways of managing our time. Um, yeah, it's really hard to make shifts in your world if you haven't created the space for it to happen.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I always say too, if it's not on my calendar, it's not gonna happen. I firmly believe that. And something else that you mentioned around, I wish I could remember your word for word, but it was something around like, the people that love you, right? They're trying to guide you based off of what they know, right? And
Yes.
everything that we know, believe, think, perceive was either taught or caught, right? I say this all
Hmm.
the time. You don't come out of the womb with a specific stance on something based off of who you were raised, the culture, all the things that you were around growing up, that based your original belief systems. And I think that that is why I encourage people to really vet mentors, right? So many people are like, oh, I've got this mentor. It's like, great, but what are you going to that mentor for? Because the mentor, right? Like we always talk about the difference between a coach and a mentor, because a lot of people don't know that there is a difference between coaching, consulting, counseling, and mentorship. There is a big difference. And I can link past episodes and go into depth on this. But the difference between a coach and a mentor is the mentor most likely is going to say, here's what I've gone through, and here's my advice to you based off of whether that worked or didn't, right? Like if I had a bad experience going through that, here's what I'm going to caution you with. If I had a good experience going through that, hey, here, do it this way. This worked for me. I'm assuming it'll work for you. Not always the case, especially if your mentor is 20 years older than you, if they're a different gender than you, if they grew up in a different uh, location than you, a different industry than you, if they grew up with different cultures and conditionings, right? There are a lot of variables to consider when working with a mentor. And so I think if you're not mentally uh, standing firm, that mentor can influence you down the wrong path. And so the difference
Yeah.
between a coach is when a good coach isn't supposed to give you the answer, not necessarily. They're asking good questions to bring out the thought process in you and helping you come up with the right answer for you.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that a lot of people can get those mixed up, and that's why I say, like, okay, cool if you have a mentor, but be careful with the mentor because they're gonna probably influence you to make a decision, whereas a coach should be pretty hands off in that case.
Yeah. No, gosh. I mean, I could say so much about this. I've had some really wonderful mentors in my time, and I've had some real shit ones too. Um, and and the folks that I would label as shit mentors, I don't think that they are bad people. I don't think that they're bad people. In fact, there's two in my head who I will not name, but um, I think are actually really stand up human beings. And um, some of what was challenging in us working together was they were implanting me with their fears. And they were encouraging me to try things that had worked for them, but didn't necessarily align with the way that I like to work or the ways that I see working in alignment with my values. Um, and so, gosh, it's such a tricky road, and as a young professional, it can be when you're starting to when you realize, well, let's just say there's so much freedom that comes when you realize, like, most people don't know what the hell they're doing. We're all just kind of Broadwaying it through life. To there's a huge performance aspect to all of this, and um, I like to say, I'm happy to tell you my way. I'm happy to tell you what works for me. My way will not be your way. Um, and from time to time, as a coach, listen, I'm a human being. There are times where I think I'm pretty freaking brilliant, and I'm over here itching in my seat to be like, "Oh, I've got a great idea for you." Um, and I can't help myself, but I try to position it in a way. It's like, hey, I've got a thought. I'm not sure I can move on in conversation unless I share it. Could I do that? And will you give me the gift of letting me know if you think it's shit? And perhaps it's either something we can scrap or we can edit, but let me share this thought. And most of the time, it's a yes. You can share it, and I think asking the question also opens up to, I'm very willing to be wrong. I'm very willing. I hold it very lightly when I offer something. Um, and yeah, so I think the mentoring and the coaching, it's not that we don't have ideas or things you might try or tools or frameworks, but everything's held just a lot more lightly than it is with a mentor who might be shaping you for something very specific.
Yeah. Well, okay. So very transparent, very vulnerable moment right here. I hope that by now, if you've listened to any other episode of mine, you probably know this, but if this is the very first one you're tuning into, I always like to say, like, this is what I'm still struggling with. Like, even though I'm a coach, even though I've got certifications, even though I got, several years under my belt, I am still growing. I am still learning. And I think if you say that you're not, like, you're a ignorant, like,
Yeah,
because it's an ever evolving thing. And if you stop growing, you start dying. Like, I don't know who said that, but I heard it once. And I truly believe that. I mean, like, every day I'm collecting new information. And even last week, I put my foot in my mouth. Like, there are things I'm like, oh my gosh, how have I never been aware of that? I like literally do this for a living. How did I not catch that? It happens all the time to me. And I'm sure that
yes,
other
of
people do
course.
it too. I'm willing to admit it. I don't know if that's gonna discredit me or not, unqualify me, but there are a lot of things where it's like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe, like, how have I never had awareness around that before?" And my life's work right now is helping people set boundaries and show up intentionally. And, your words do matter. They do affect people. And all the time, I'm telling my husband, because he's Italian, and some of the times, the way that he says things, it just comes across very um, harsh, little brash. It's a little rough. And I'm like, it's not what you say; it's how you say it. And I preach that all the time. And then the other day I said something and he spit it right back at me. And he's like, "Did you just notice how you said that to me?" And I was a gut punch, a total gut punch. And I'm not even kidding. When I wanted to crawl in a hole, and I'm like, I should practice what I preach, like, but we're human. We've got these mistakes. I now have that awareness, and that had I not had the gut punch, I probably wouldn't have recognized it as much and I would have kept doing it, but I don't wanna feel that way again. And so I will never forget what that made me feel like, and so I will absolutely never forget it, and I will never do it again. Oh, at least I hope not. But, that's the thing, is like we know what we know. We have to learn and be better and show up intentionally, and I think you said it earlier, like, our thoughts turn into feelings to actions to results. You can have the thoughts, but it's when you get to the action part is where it starts to count. You can have the thought, you can have the feeling, but what you do with that is the important part there.
Oh, yeah. No, it's awareness is a lovely little conduit to choice, isn't it? Yeah, it's so in the past, right? Before we have any awareness of what's happening, we get the gut punch. And listen, 5, 10 years ago, I would get a gut punch, and maybe you were like me. I would interpret that in a very different way. See, today your interpretation is, ooh, that hurts because that's out of line with the person I want to be. 5 or 10 years ago, if I got a gut punch like that, it would be, fuck this person for making me feel like shit. Why are they throwing this in my face? I am the victim, right? And it's
Oh my
funny
goodness.
how, like, rewriting that story to be like, oh, the universe does not center around me, by the way, um, and perhaps I can use this data signal from my body, this gut punch, and interpret it a little different way. That might be in service of this relationship, rather than me making it about you know this person and what they made me feel. It's like, let me take full responsibility for what's happening to me. Um, and perhaps then I can do something about it. But awareness is, it's it's a word that we throw around. And I remember when I first started going through coaching training, um, I had mentioned that I was getting, nervous in some of my conversations. And, the mentor I was working with, the coaching mentor I was working at the time, just said, "Oh, well, that's a really powerful thing to notice." And I was like, What the fuck do you want me to do with that? Just notice it? What do you want me to do
Uh,
about it?" And,
yeah.
and over time, I've realized, like, yes, awareness is a conduit to choice, but you have to slow down, right? So, like, if I can name what's happening for me, then I might have a little bit of agency to do something about it.
Oh, dang it. So good. I I don't even I gotta process this for a second because I'm the same way, like, "Okay, great." Like, what do we do with that, right? Like, I think that's why I get so impatient, frustrated, unsatisfied, maybe even working, like, with counselors. Like, I've tried to do some therapy, and I'm like, "Ugh, come on, get deeper than that," right? Like, let's go because I hate surface level stuff. "Well, how does that really make you feel today?" I'm like, "I just told you I'm pissed," right? Like, let's go. I totally get it. Man, I'm reeling from that. That is so good. I don't even know where I wanna go with that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's
That's
yeah.
yeah,
I well, I had my own. I went to therapy for many years, and it was such a valuable experience. Um, and the difference between therapy and coaching, therapy was a lot of what you described, right? I built so much awareness, and I talked through a lot of things, and I got over a whole bunch of shit that I needed to get over. Um, and I would often leave those conversations wondering, like, well, and here's my business becoming. I'm like, how do I operationalize this? Like, what do I do to implement this into my world? And what I love in the coaching world is, like, we pair awareness with action. It's like, okay, if you, based on what you've learned about yourself here, like, what is one small step that you have to take? Not, okay, you want to be on Broadway, so let's start crafting your 5-year plan to get there, and planning your finances and all of the, like, no, 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 no. Who's one person you can call and ask some questions to? What's one class that you could sign up for? We don't have to do it all at once. Let's make one small move, but let's bridge this awareness that you're having of this desire into something that helps you get that. And that
yeah,
was the link that was missing for me in therapy from time to time. But I had a
yeah,
wonderful therapist. I won't call her out because I well, for many reasons, but yeah.
yeah. I think there's definitely a time and a place, and for those that are like, "Okay, well, can you explain deeper?" I have kind of been told that therapy, counseling, open wounds. If something is traumatic or something has happened to you that you're stuck on, can't heal from, need to process and overcome, go there. You're looking for
Hmm.
a mentor to help you through something that they've gone through. You're looking for their wisdom. A mentor is a great place. If you're looking for somebody to help do work with you or for you, consultant route to go. Coach, really focused on forward motion, where do you wanna go next, but takes into consideration all the other things too.
Yep. We'll be the boat, but you're the one who's rowing.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. I'll help you. I'll help you. I'll be there with you, but it's your work and you're responsible for it.
Hmm.
It's basically not a cop out, that's just the way that it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's so good, and I think I almost wonder if and I don't know the answer to this, I'd love to hear your insight, but, like, is awareness our generation's new uh, wisdom. Like back in the day, you would have like people are like, "Oh, you're looking for wisdom." They're wise, knowledgeable, or a mature person. And I feel like awareness is our new keyword.
Yeah. There's the first thing that came to mind was uh, just a series of examples. Can I share some? Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
I mean, I think awareness has, been a tenet for quite some time, at least for those who want to walk the enlightened path, to say something that sounds a little spiritual. But what I'm learning about awareness is um, that it does matter the lens that you're looking through, right? There's somatic awareness of what's happening in your body, and deepening your relationship to the signals that your body sends, honoring them. It's as simple as noticing when I'm tired, when my body's telling me it's time to rest, and not trying to overpower that. And granted, our modern world doesn't make that very easy. Um, but I read the most interesting book a few years ago called The Hunger Habit, and it was a 30-day like mindfulness book around mindful eating. And some of what, Dr. Judson Brewer is the guy who wrote the book, and he's advocating for build your awareness of your taste buds and really savor your food and chew every bite and eat with all of your senses and really slow that down. Awareness can only happen if we're slowing down, by the way, in any area of our lives. So there's somatic awareness. And then I think about a uh, a holistic health and wellness person that I've spoken to a few times, and she talks about, well, I have I have a lot of people in my world who are getting Botox. You may as well, and no shame. I personally, I don't care if you'd like to get Botox, go get it. But this person was advocating, like, if you develop an awareness of your facial muscles and when they're moving and the expressions that you use, um, you might be able to avoid wrinkles that way, right? Um, and some of this all sounds like bullshit until you start practicing it. But we also talk about spiritual awareness, and there's just so many domains of awareness that we can practice, and it can be overwhelming, especially, um, for you and I and other folks who are practitioners in the field of, like, we sort of have this awareness of all these different awarenesses that you can cultivate in your life. You can be aware of your leadership stance. You can be aware of your habits. You can be aware of the relationships and how those leverage opportunities for you. And I guess to me, it's the idea is not that we want to have awareness of everything all the time, but that we slow down and we have a few lanes that we're filtering our awareness through. And we can always expand that awareness at any time. But I think what I mean by that is, especially when I have this tendency when there's something that's not going well in my life or that I like to be different. I want 47 tools. I want to use them all right now. I want to make this switch off and on very quickly, and that's just not the way that it works, right? I like to say, let's pick one tool and let's work with that for a while. Let's give it at least a couple of weeks and work with it every day. And then if we decide that tool is not working, we can pick another one. But it's really hard to reach for a hammer that you've never felt in your hand before. Like, it's really hard to develop awareness around things that you haven't investigated or, once you notice something, then it becomes about noticing it again and building a pattern around, like, noticing it for yourself. But awareness takes work, and um, it's something that you have to feed.
Oh man, that's really good too. I want to go back to the thing where it's just like quieting the noise, slowing down long enough to just be aware. This reminded me, so like you mentioned at the very beginning of the episode, um, how you kind of like link animal behavior to like how we could possibly lead to, and I do that through my kids. Like I use my kids as the example of like, remember when you parent this, or remember when your kid did that thing. Like I use my kids as my example all the time. One, because I didn't grow up with livestock, but two, I'm a mom of two and that they rule my life. So I have two kids, and my oldest, who's 9 now, we homeschool, and we just did some anatomy stuff, and we reviewed the five senses. And one of the experiences was close your eyes, and I'm going to put salt and sugar in front of you, and I want you to taste the salt first, or I don't remember if it was the sugar first or whatever. Taste one of them. Put like lick your finger, pick a little bit up, put it on your tongue, and keep your eyes closed and just notice what that taste does once it hits your tongue. Where does it go next? Does it like signal up to your brain? And then like we did the same thing with a piece of ice. Like keep your eyes closed. I put a little bit of ice on the inside of his arm, and you just notice where does the cold spread to, and you just like being aware of those things and like literally just being. And I think that I don't know if I'm becoming woo woo, but like this just being aware part, I think is just so unnormal for people in agriculture, right? Like we're in tune with what our crops are doing. We're paying attention to, oh, your leaf turned purple, you're low on this. You start to see wilting around the edges here. You need that. You could look at cattle, right? You're noticing this thing on them or how they're acting. You're seeing that this is happening here. That must mean that. But when we do it for, like, we can't do it for ourselves. We won't do it for ourselves. We don't know how, right? Like, oh, your shoulders are starting to hurt. You woke up with a cramp in your arm. Could it be because your jaw has been locked for the last 2 weeks because of stress? Right? Like, we don't pay attention to those signals. We notice them in our operation, we notice them in our machinery, we notice them in our livestock and our plants, but we don't slow down long enough to pay attention to them in our own bodies. And so that's the work that I'm trying to incorporate. I mean, so we've got Greg Kruger coming into the AgriMinds Summit doing the breath work and like
Hmm.
literally just challenging people to slow down and breathe. And it sounds so simple, but it's like, but when was the last time you literally just sat there and took a deep breath? Like literally filled your entire lungs and slowly exhaled and like literally just focused on breathing, the thing that's keeping you alive. Guarantee
Yeah.
it. You're like never probably. And so I mean, we're kind of trying to get back to the basics here of just like, let's just like pay attention. How are you breathing? What's your posture? What are you ingesting into your body? What are you eating? What are you drinking? What are you not eating? What are you not drinking? Start there. And like even my dentist helped me become aware of some of this stuff because I went in for my 6 month cleaning 2 years ago and apparently I had a cracked molar. Had no idea. I'm in there just to do my routine checkup, get my teeth cleaned. She's like, "You have a cracked molar. It's literally split in half." I'm like, "How do I not know that?" Right? And so we get to doing some talking, and she's like, "Open up your tongue or open up your mouth, get your tongue out." And so I do that, and there's like scalloping along the sides of my tongue. And supposedly that means that I like clench my jaw and like suck the tongue to the sides of my mouth, which basically means I'm tense, right? And so she's like, that's a big signal into TMJ, the cracked tooth, grinding of your teeth when you're sleeping, clenched jaw, do you snore? All those are signs to tight muscles in your shoulders, tense, not sleeping well. And so it's like a whole ripple effect. And so I've been doing, I think it's called myofunctional therapy in your mouth, which is basically like therapy for your tongue. It's the craziest thing. And just doing exercises with my tongue, it sounds so crazy, has helped me sleep better. Is the craziest thing.
Yes. Yeah.
It's scientific though, I swear.
Yeah. It's so scientific. I mean, what we are, what we practice, right? And so I think some of what like another barrier to change is like building consistency, right? So you talk about doing exercises. It, it's it's important. Like I describe like lifting metaphorical dumbbells all of the time. You know, the things that feel hard in our lives. Like, of course, the first time you pick up a 50-pound dumbbell and try to throw it over your head, like, first of all, you might hurt yourself. But it's going to feel very tough, right? So let's start with something a little lighter to build some confidence, and then we can work our way up. But if we don't build some sort of practice around these things that we want, they continue to not happen, right? But the another thing that you were talking about, right, with like helping people to access more awareness, um, one of the words that I would use is just presence. I want to be present for more of my life. I don't want to be in my head for all of it. I want to experience what life has to offer. And I think most folks in the ag and farming profession can probably think of a moment and maybe do this with me. It's first thing in the morning. You have a cup of coffee. There's no demands on you at this particular moment. You're watching the sunrise and you can see the breath coming out of your mouth and it's quiet. That feeling is available to us more than just in those moments that stop and take our breaths away. We can access that calmness more. It is inaccessible if we're moving too fast.
That's so good. I was picturing that as you were talking. I'm like, "Man, when was the last time I was able to do that?"
I
Because,
know. I live in Seattle now, so
typically typically my kids are up before I am. I don't get coffee till it's 9 a.m. some days. I'm still drinking my morning coffee. It's like 1 o'clock right now. Um, and so I'm sitting here thinking like that took 30 seconds to just sit with that feeling. Even if I'm not there, I'm in my basement right now and it's freezing cold because it's, 25 degrees outside and recording this podcast episode with you. But I can picture myself on a beach, soaking up the sun, listening to the waves crashing. And even just that 3 seconds of describing that did slow me down. And so those tools are available to you. Those mindset shifts are available to you. Even if it's not your reality, it's a thought. And that can help you slow down to just figure out how to be right here, right now. Be where your feet are, getting grounded. What's your reality? What's going on? Taking inventory. And when you give yourself the permission to just take 10 seconds to do that, it can help you be more aware of what's going on, thus opening the doorway to figuring out, does my career align? Does my thought pattern serve me well? Are the actions that I'm taking in my personal and professional life who I want to actually continue to show up as, or does that need to change? So it is a huge ripple effect. It is so fascinating. The psychology behind all of this, just like I totally geek out behind it because it's just so interesting. It's so cool. And I love talking about it. And I'm so thankful that you took time out of your day to come on to the podcast and share so much wisdom, so much awareness, some really cool tools, and your story. I mean, I don't even feel like we got into much of it. But that's what happens when you don't script your podcast and you just literally have genuine conversations and just go with the flow. So I love that. David, if you could leave people with one final thought, key to awareness, exercise, quote, anything to just leave them better after they've listened to this podcast than they were when they started it, what would it be?
You know what? What's coming to mind? A wonderful friend of mine. Her name's Sandy Smith, and she's a brilliant coach. She's here in Seattle. Um, at one point, and she was part of my training. She was one of the coaches that trained me. At one point when we were in training, she had just said, hey, you're perfect just the way you are, and let's start from that assumption, and then we can build whatever you'd like on the top of that. And so I've blown my life up enough to tell you that that's not the only way to move forward. You're perfect just the way you are, and you may change anything you'd like at any point if you so choose. And things might be functioning perfectly well for you right now. So I hate the idea of that I'm broken and I have to fix something. Maybe not. What if we operate from the idea that you're fully formed just as you are right now? And then maybe if there's things that you'd like to be different, we can work on those. So that I guess I don't know why, but that was what I wanted to say. Is just, you're perfect just the way you are.
That is so relieving and it just feels good. Even just hearing it. I know you're not even speaking to me, but I guess you are. I'm hearing it. And it's just a reminder, like, there doesn't have to be a change. Isn't always this next thing that you have to reach, to accomplish, to change, to adjust. You can just be. That's good enough. That's good
Yeah.
enough.
So long as it's a choice.
Hmm. Yeah, I always say make the decision and have your back on it. And as long as you do that, you're golden.
I couldn't agree more. No, it's
Ah,
it's been
I
such
think that's perfect.
a wonder and delight to get to spend time with you, Kacee. I have so much respect for the work that you do and the people that you serve. I know that they are well served by you, and I work, uh, I'd say 25% of the time I work in agriculture these days. Most of my clients are in other industries and governments these days, but I love the work in ag, and I'm always delighted to get to spend time with folks in the farming world, because it's where I was raised and where I was brought up and where I still do a little bit of work. And yeah, so thank you for the invitation to speak today. I'm humbled, honored, and delighted.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on. Do you have a place that people can follow along if they want to connect with you? I mean, do you have anything like that that you want to steer people to if they want to get to know you a little more?
Yeah, well, what I would say is, I've got some social media presences which I'll guide you to, but I'm largely I post here and there, but I'm largely offline. So you can contact if you want to talk, let's talk. I would love to create time in my schedule, and you and I could connect. Uh, Two easy ways to do that. I'll add a third. One, if you want to follow me on Instagram, my handle is Wines and Bovines because I, used to drink a lot of wine and I used to be a dairy farmer. I still drink some wine from time to time, but I'm not a dairy farmer anymore, but I can't seem to get rid of the handle. So Wines and Bovines, that's my handle. You can also find me on LinkedIn and send me a message there. David Jones, my company name is Devello Solutions, Devello. Or you can contact me on my website, send me a link through my contact form, and that's devellosolutions.com. Again, Devello solutions.com.
David, thank you so much for being on the AgriMinds podcast.
Thank you, Kacee.